Hi, my name is Oscar and I'm a scientist. In today's video, we're going to talk about the I-140 cover letter. The cover letter is a very important part of your I-140 petition for the EB2 NIW green card. So we should be careful on how we structure it, how we talk about our achievements, and how we prove each of those achievements to the USCIS officer. So I'll show you how I did it and how you can do it to have a very successful application. Let's jump into it.
So before getting into the cover letter matter, we're going to review the requirements for EB2 NIW because this is important to discuss the cover letter itself. So just to have a quick recap, the EB2 NIW category is part of the EB2 general category, and for that you need to show that you have an advanced degree, master, PhD, and there's other ways to show that. And alternatively, if you don't have an advanced degree, you can still show that you have what is called exceptional ability, and USCIS has criteria to define that, so you can go on their website and check what are those criteria, and if you complete that, then you're done with the EB2 general requirement. Remember that EB2 is employment-based, second priority. But then in NIW, National Interest Waiver, you're asking the US government to waive the requirement to have a job offer or to have a sponsor. So you are the self-petitioner, you are petitioning for yourself. So for that, you have to provide extra evidence. And those are the famous 3 prongs of the matter of Danazar that I leave you a video over here to check that information more in detail, but you have to have an endeavor that has substantial merit and national importance. You have to prove you're well positioned to advance that endeavor, and on balance, it is beneficial to the US to waive the job offer. So the I-140 application really delivers all this evidence that you need, the general EB2 evidence on one side, and the 3 prongs of the matter of Danazar on the other side. And if we go back to the I-140 petition as a whole, I have a video on that I'll leave a link over here in the corner, but there are different parts of this I-140 petition. You have the forms and fee. I mean, a lot of people think that submitting for EB2 NIW is just submitting forms. That's only partially true. There is a portion that is forms, the I-140 and the ETA 9089. And of course the money that you have to submit, and I leave a link here explaining how to pay for those government fees. But then there's the actual meat of the EB2 NIW petition, that is the cover letter, and we'll talk in detail about that in this video. And finally you have the list of exhibits, and that's all the evidence that you have to provide to prove that what you're telling the officer in the cover letter is actually true and is substantiated. And here you have a picture of my own petition before I send it to USCIS with all the parts and a battery for reference on the size of this document. So let's talk about the cover letter now. The cover letter is really important because it is the narrative, it's the story that you're telling the USCIS officer. You want them to know that you fulfill the requirements, so in that letter you are explaining how and why you are fulfilling them. So, in my opinion, the letter has to be easy to understand for non-experts in the field, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that later, but it is easy. Just think that the USCIS officer cannot be an expert in all the fields, so most likely he or she are not experts in your field. So if you start talking about things that are too complicated or have a lot of technical terms, they will get lost, and that's not going to help you. Number 2, you must reference all the important documents attached later in the exhibit section. Remember that you cannot just tell things without providing the proof. So in the cover letter you have to explain those things, but then you have to reference the point of the petition where you are adding those documents, and that's generally in the exhibit section. You have to highlight the most critical aspects to support your case. So you have to see what is really important, what is less important, and you have to give priority to those things that are really critical. You have to be organized. according to the requirements for national interest waiver, so it's easy to review. And that goes back to, you don't want the officers to get lost in all your writing and a long letter. You want to make their life very easy, so I will tell you a structure that makes sense and that is straightforward for them. So number one, you have to plan before you write. Like always in life, before doing something, it's better to plan. I give 1 to 2 weeks of time for you to think what is the strategy you want to follow, what is important for you to have in your petition. Start by updating your CV. Why? Because you have to have your CV in the petition anyway. So start there, start completing all your relevant experience, update everything, add the skills to showcase in your petition, and have a very comprehensive CV, because then what you're going to do is you're going to review it and identify what to use in the cover letter, what I call here the what. What do you want to showcase? And then start deciding what kind of evidence you need to attach. That can be certificates, reference letters, personal statement, business plan, publications, whatever is relevant in your field, and that I call the how you're going to prove that a certain requirement is met. The CV itself will be one of the documents that you will attach later as exhibit. What kind of language you should use? Remember that the USCIS officer has limited time to review your petition. What I heard is that they have about 40 minutes to do it. I'm not sure if that's completely accurate, but for sure they have limited time, and those petitions are very long. Also remember that they have no specific technical knowledge on your field. They may have it, but they most likely don't. So use language that is simple, easy to understand. Just think, how would you explain this to a relative or a friend that is not in your field? Would they understand it? Avoid technical jargon as much as possible. All those technical terms, make sure they are general enough that someone without the specific education in the field will understand them. Don't be repetitive. It doesn't help you. Make the document as long as it needs to be and not more, because you don't want someone that is getting bored when is reading your document or think that you're hiding something by repeating and repeating and repeating. These things will affect you negatively. It's not good. So just cut to the chase, tell what you need to tell, and be straight and to the point. Number 3, quotes and exhibits. All the evidence that you are talking about in your cover letter will be provided later in the petition as exhibit. If you remember when we talk about the general structure of the I-140 petition, the exhibits will come last, but you will need to reference them. So you can use quotes to highlight certain very important information that you want to highlight from your exhibits. You can bring it as a quote, but then you will always reference in what exhibit you are putting that document. For example, here I have an example from my own petition that you can download in EB2NIW.info. So this particular passage is about the prong number 2, I believe, talking about how I'm well positioned in the field. So of course I'm talking very well about myself. I hold an impressive record of authorship in the field of bioprocessing. As evidence of this success, my work has resulted in 7 peer-reviewed publications. And then you can see I say exhibits 15 and 16. I'm going to zoom in here. So that's the way it's referenced. Okay, and then I also have conference papers in professional meetings, and then I refer to exhibit number 8, and that's the CV. Because I want to really showcase all of this in a nice way, I add a quote from one of the recommendation letters that talks about this. So for example, Dr. XYZ, my PhD advisor, highlights how extraordinary this accomplishment is in his letter. And then I quote, and I even put in bold whatever I really want the USCIS officer to see, and then I reference to the exhibit number, whatever, in this case exhibit number 5. And that's how you should do it, I think. I mean, this is my suggestion, this is how I did it, and of course it was a successful petition. I think it's a very nice way to pick and choose what you want to highlight. At the same time, you are providing the reference, so the USCIS officer can go to your exhibit section and actually get all the information there. In the case of certain things like publications, if you're a scientist, you don't need to put the whole 20-30 page publication there. You can put the first pages just so they have the proof that you actually publish what you say you published. Alright, what is the structure of an EB2 NIW cover letter? I think we will need maybe one more video or maybe several videos to talk in detail about this, but in this video I'll just give you the high-level structure. And the high-level structure is the following. First, we have an introduction. As everything in life, when it comes to long documents, you want to have a short summary of each section before starting, so the USCIS officer knows where they are getting into. Then we have a table of contents, and that's an index with page numbers so they can quickly go to wherever they want to go. And then we have, in my case, I had 4 chapters. And if you remember the general requirements for this NIW category, you have the EB2 general requirement, advanced degree or exceptional ability. That's 1 chapter. So there, in my case, for example, I was going for the advanced degree one. So I would say, you know, I'm a holder of a PhD, and then I reference the exhibit where the copy of my diploma is. If you have a foreign diploma, then on top of that you will have a reference to the exhibit where the equivalence evaluation is done, showing what US degree is equivalent to yours. So that's kind of the philosophy here. And then the next 3 chapters are each of the 3 prongs of the matter of Dandasar. So substantial merit and national importance, being well positioned to advance the endeavor, and then on balance, why they should waive the labor certification. And again, I have a video about the matter of Dandasar. You can go and check in detail how you can argue these different things. And then I had, in my case, because I didn't have any dependent, I had section number 7, petitioner's non-immigrant status. I was providing there an overview of what had been my history of non-immigrant in the United States. In my case, I had been a J visa holder, an F visa holder, and an H visa holder. So I explained that in text, and I reference the exhibits where I provided a copy of each of those visas, a copy of my I-94 document, and so on, even my passport, and those kind of things. If you have dependents, this is the time to indicate that you have them and provide the same type of documentations. And of course, this is stronger in the case of people that are already in the US because you have a history of visas and so on, and maybe it's lighter if you are applying from abroad. Remember that the I-140 is for you as the main petitioner, but you are already informing the USCIS if you have dependents. You should tell them now. Even though they don't have to submit their own I-140, they only have to submit adjustment of status. If your I-140 is approved, then each person will have to submit their own adjustment of status or do their own consular processing. Finally, you have conclusions. What happens after you finish writing? Like everything, invest time in reviewing. You spend a lot of time, a lot of effort doing this. You contacted people to get recommendation letters, you researched the US policy to make sure that you know that your work is important for the US. You've done a lot of stuff, so make sure you check that everything's correct. Grammar issues, number 1. Typos, errors referencing exhibits. There's, like you saw, there's a lot of exhibits that you may have, and you want to make sure that if they go to the number that you are telling them to go to, they will find information there. There's no messed up references. For grammar checks, you may use online tools like Grammarly. I use it. I'm not affiliated with it. I don't get any commission, but it's a great tool that has a free version for people like me, non-native speakers, that as much as you're fluent in English, you're going to make mistakes when you write. So just use whatever resources are out there that can help you. And of course, share the letter with a friend or colleague to get a second review, especially if they are native speakers, they can help you with the language, but also just to see if they understand what you're saying in the letter. Remember that this should be understandable by everyone, not only people in your field. How long should the cover letter be? There are no official rules. You know that I always tell you to go to the USCIS website and check all the official requirements and download all the forms from there. In this case, I've checked. There's no official rules on how lengthy this should be, but typically I've seen 10 to 40 pages is the most common length. Considering how much evidence you have to provide, I think less than 10 pages is really hard that you can make an effective letter that short. On the opposite side, like we talked earlier, a letter that is too long will be repetitive and boring, and that will not help your case. So don't go too far talking and talking and talking without saying much. For reference, if you're curious, my cover letter was 22 pages long. Now, if I had to do it again, I would write a shorter one, not longer. When I go back and read my letter, and you can read it too if you go to my website and download it, I still think that I could have been more direct and shorter in my explanations, but it has been successful. It was approved, so I'm happy with that. But my gut feeling is that it's always to be a little bit more concise than being too long. And while I'm saying this, I'm talking and talking and talking, but that's what you should not do when you're writing. So if you want to read my own petition, and that includes the cover letter, you can go to EB2NIW.info. You can download my real, successful, and actionable petition. Real because I only redacted the most personal information, for example, my social security number and stuff like that. But I left a lot of things there. 99% of the information is still there. Successful because it was approved by USCIS, and you can see the evidence of the approval in my website as well before you go ahead and download it. And it's actionable because even if we are different, we are different in different fields, you can follow the structure, the way I wrote it. You can get ideas of how to quote things, how to reference things, and that will help you. I mean, you will have to do this by yourself if you are doing this without a lawyer. Even if you are doing this with a lawyer, you still have to write a lot of things for them, so this can be a great resource for you.
Hey, if you like this video, give a like to the video on YouTube, subscribe to my channel, talk about it to your friends, and visit my website EB2NIW.info for more information about this type of green cards.